In the heart of a sprawling galaxy, where stars shimmered like scattered jewels and nebulae painted the void with hues no human eye could fully comprehend, there existed a world unlike any other. Zyrith 7 was a planet cloaked in perpetual twilight, its skies streaked with lavender clouds that danced to the rhythm of twin suns setting on opposite horizons. It was here, amidst crystalline spires and floating gardens suspended by ancient technology, that Princess Alyra lived, a being so radiant she seemed less a creature of flesh and more an embodiment of light itself. Her beauty was not merely physical. It was something deeper, something almost ethereal. Her skin glowed faintly, as if infused with starlight, while her silver hair cascaded down her back in waves that caught every color of the spectrum. Eyes large and luminous, they held galaxies within them, swirling patterns of violet and gold that seemed to pierce through time itself. Yet for all her splendor, Alyra carried herself with a quiet grace, her movements deliberate yet fluid, each step imbued with purpose. But beneath this facade of perfection lay burdens too heavy for even the strongest among mortals to bear. As the sole heir to the throne of Zyrith 7, Alyra faced pressures unimaginable to those outside her realm. The Council of Elders loomed over her every decision, their expectations rigid and unyielding. They demanded alliances forged through marriage, believing only such bonds could secure peace across the fractured systems of their empire. For years, suitors from neighboring planets had come bearing gifts and promises, hoping to win her favor. But none had succeeded, not because she found them unworthy but because she refused to bind herself to anyone out of obligation rather than love. The weight of these expectations pressed upon her constantly, forcing her to navigate a delicate balance between duty and desire. She longed for freedom, for moments when she could simply exist without the mantle of royalty weighing her down. And so, one fateful evening, as she stood atop the highest tower of her palace, gazing at the endless expanse of space stretching before her, an idea began to take shape, one that would change everything. It started innocently enough, a conversation with her trusted advisor, Vaylin, who had served her family for centuries. He spoke of humans, those curious beings from Earth whose civilizations were still young compared to the ancient empires of the cosmos. Humans fascinated Alyra. Their lives were fleeting, fragile even, yet they burned brightly, driven by passions and dreams that defied logic. Unlike many of her kind, who approached life with calculated precision, humans embraced chaos, finding meaning in imperfection. Perhaps, Alyra mused aloud, turning away from the window, what I need is not another suitor bound by tradition but someone entirely unexpected. Vaylin's expression darkened, his scaled brow furrowing. You speak of folly, my princess. To involve outsiders, especially those of such limited understanding, is dangerous. Dangerous or liberating? She countered softly, her voice carrying a note of defiance. I am suffocating under the weight of expectation. If I must choose a partner, let it be someone chosen by me, not dictated by politics. And thus, the plan formed. A human male, plucked from obscurity, would pose as her husband. Not truly married, of course, that would have been unthinkable, but convincingly enough to satisfy the elders and buy her time. Time to find her own path, to reclaim control over her destiny. What neither she nor Vaylin anticipated, however, was how profoundly this decision would alter the course of both their lives. On Earth, nestled in the bustling cityscape of Tokyo, lived Ethan Carter, a man whose life revolved around routine and survival. At 32, he bore the weariness of someone far older than his years, his lean frame often hidden beneath layers of worn clothing meant to shield him from both the biting winter winds and the harsh realities of existence. By day, Ethan worked as a courier, weaving through crowded streets on his battered bicycle, delivering packages to strangers whose lives seemed impossibly distant from his own. By night, he retreated to a cramped apartment above a convenience store, its walls adorned with maps of constellations he'd meticulously traced during sleepless nights spent dreaming of escape. Ethan's fascination with the cosmos wasn't born of idle curiosity but stemmed from a childhood spent gazing at the stars through a hand-me-down telescope, imagining worlds beyond the confines of his troubled home. His mother, battling addiction, disappeared when he was 12, leaving him to navigate the labyrinth of foster care systems until he aged out at 18. Those early scars ran deep, shaping him into a man who valued independence above all else, even if it came at the cost of genuine connection. Friends were few, relationships fewer still. He preferred solitude, finding solace in books about astronomy, quantum physics, and alien theories. Anything that offered a glimpse into the infinite unknown. His financial struggles were relentless, a constant tug-of-war between making rent and feeding himself. The courier job barely covered his expenses, forcing him to scrimp on essentials and rely on instant noodles as his primary sustenance. Despite these hardships, Ethan harbored a secret hope, a belief that someday, somehow, his life might intersect with something extraordinary. He didn't know what form it would take, only that he felt destined for more than the monotony of daily deliveries and lonely evenings. That pivotal moment arrived unexpectedly on a chilly February morning. As Ethan crouched beside his bike, adjusting a loose chain, a sleek black car pulled up alongside him. Its tinted windows rolled down to reveal two impeccably dressed figures, their features sharp and unreadable. One held out a small device, which emitted a soft hum as it scanned Ethan's face. Before he could react, the second figure spoke in clipped tones. "You've been selected for an assignment of great importance," they said, their words devoid of emotion. "Come willingly, or we will ensure compliance." Before Ethan could protest, or even process what was happening, the world dissolved into a blur of light and sound. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself standing in a chamber unlike anything he'd ever seen. Walls shimmered with iridescent hues, shifting like liquid glass, while gravity seemed slightly off-kilter, tugging at his body in ways that made him feel simultaneously weightless and anchored. Panic surged through him, but before he could voice his confusion, a melodic voice cut through the haze. "I apologize for the abruptness of your arrival." The speaker stepped forward, and Ethan froze. She was otherworldly. Her presence commanded attention, radiating an aura of authority tempered by an underlying vulnerability that disarmed him instantly. "My name is Elira," she continued, her tone measured yet warm. "And you are here because I require your assistance." For a moment, Ethan thought he'd stumbled into some elaborate dream, or perhaps a sci-fi movie set. But the intensity in her gaze, the way her words resonated with undeniable sincerity, told him otherwise. Still, skepticism lingered. "Assistance? You kidnapped me from my bike just to ask for help." Elira inclined her head slightly, acknowledging his irritation. "Time is not a luxury I possess. Allow me to explain." With remarkable composure, she outlined her predicament, the suffocating demands of her royal lineage, the relentless pressure to marry strategically, and her desperate need for autonomy. As she spoke, Ethan listened intently, his initial disbelief giving way to cautious intrigue. There was something compelling about her, something achingly human beneath the veneer of regality. When she finished, silence hung heavy between them. Finally, Ethan broke it. "Let me get this straight. You want me, a random guy from Earth, to pretend to be your husband? Just so you can buy yourself some breathing room?" "In essence, yes," Elira replied, her expression unwavering. "In return, I offer compensation beyond anything you could imagine. Wealth, knowledge, experiences most humans only dream of." Ethan laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "You're asking me to lie to people who probably have technology capable of detecting lies faster than I can blink. How exactly does this end well for either of us?" "It will work," Elira insisted, stepping closer. "Because no one expects it. No one anticipates a human playing such a role. It is precisely our differences that make this believable." Her conviction unsettled him. Here was a woman, no, an alien princess, who wielded power and privilege beyond comprehension, yet she stood before him, pleading for trust. Against every instinct screaming caution, Ethan felt a flicker of curiosity ignite within him. Maybe it was the promise of adventure, maybe it was the desperation etched subtly into her luminous eyes. Whatever it was, it compelled him to nod slowly. "Fine," he said, exhaling sharply. "I'll do it. But if this goes sideways, don't say I didn't warn you." A ghost of a smile touched Elira's lips, and for the first time since their encounter began, Ethan saw a crack in her armor, a glimpse of the person behind the crown. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice softer now. "You won't regret this." But as the days turned into weeks, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps they both already had. The transformation was nothing short of surreal. Within hours of agreeing to Elira's proposal, Ethan found himself whisked away to a suite rivaling the grandeur of royal chambers. The room shimmered with opulence, Crystalline furniture that refracted light into dazzling rainbows, walls embedded with pulsating veins of luminescent material, and a bed so vast it seemed designed for giants. Servants moved silently around him, attending to every conceivable need, though their presence unnerved him. He felt like an actor thrust onto the stage of a play he hadn't rehearsed, surrounded by props and costumes meant to convince others of a reality he barely understood himself. Elira wasted no time preparing him for his new role. Lessons began immediately, intensive sessions conducted by tutors fluent in multiple languages, cultural protocols, and intricate details of Zyrathian society. Ethan struggled to absorb the deluge of information, his mind reeling as he memorized the names of noble houses, the significance of ceremonial gestures, and the subtle nuances of addressing royalty. Each session left him mentally drained, yet Elira remained patient, guiding him with a blend of firmness and encouragement. Her dedication surprised him. Despite her position, she never dismissed his questions or frustrations, instead treating them with genuine interest. Their interactions grew increasingly complex as they rehearsed scenarios together. At first, their conversations were stilted, awkward exchanges filled with forced smiles and overly formal speech. But gradually, cracks began to appear in the facade they were building. During one particularly grueling lesson on diplomatic etiquette, Ethan accidentally knocked over a delicate vase, shattering it into glittering shards. Horrified, he braced himself for Elira's wrath, only to see her shoulders shake with silent laughter. "Well," she said, her voice tinged with amusement, "at least you've mastered the art of destruction." That moment marked a shift. For the first time, Ethan glimpsed the woman beneath the title, the one who could laugh at mistakes, who wasn't immune to the absurdity of their situation. In turn, Elira began to notice qualities in Ethan that intrigued her. His blunt honesty, though occasionally jarring, revealed a refreshing authenticity absent in her usual entourage. When he questioned certain traditions, pointing out their inefficiencies with startling clarity, she found herself considering perspectives she'd long taken for granted. Yet, despite these growing connections, tension simmered beneath the surface. Ethan wrestled with feelings of inadequacy, acutely aware of how out of place he was among the polished elite of Zyrath 7. At formal gatherings, he stood stiffly beside Elira, hyper-aware of the curious stares directed his way. Some guests whispered behind raised hands, their disdain thinly veiled, while others regarded him with outright hostility. The weight of their judgment pressed heavily on him, fueling doubts about whether he could truly pull off the charade. Elira, too, faced challenges. Convincing the Council of Elders required finesse, and she navigated their scrutiny with practiced poise. However, the strain showed in private moments when her mask slipped, revealing flashes of exhaustion and anxiety. Ethan caught glimpses of this vulnerability during late-night discussions in the privacy of her chambers. They spoke of trivial matters, favorite foods, childhood memories, shared fears, and in doing so, built bridges across the chasm separating their worlds. These conversations became sacred spaces, free from pretense, where they allowed themselves to be imperfect, flawed, and undeniably human. Still, the line between performance and reality blurred dangerously. Public appearances demanded intimacy, forcing them to hold hands, exchange lingering glances, and engage in displays of affection that felt increasingly natural. Ethan often caught himself staring at Elira, captivated by the way her laughter lit up entire rooms or how her fingers brushed against his arm with surprising gentleness. Similarly, Elira found comfort in Ethan's presence, his steady demeanor offering a rare reprieve from the ceaseless demands of her station. Neither dared acknowledge the growing warmth between them, fearful of complicating an already precarious arrangement. As weeks turned into months, the bond they forged became undeniable. It wasn't love, at least, not yet, but something deeper, something rooted in mutual respect and understanding. They leaned on each other, drawing strength from shared adversity, and in doing so, created a partnership that transcended mere pretense. Yet, lurking beneath this fragile harmony was the unspoken truth. Their connection was built on deception, and sooner or later, the foundation would crumble under its own weight. The court of Zyrath 7 buzzed with intrigue as whispers of the alien-human union spread like wildfire. Initially met with skepticism, the pairing soon became a spectacle, drawing nobles and dignitaries from across the galaxy to witness the unprecedented alliance. Lavish banquets transformed into stages where Elira and Ethan performed their roles with practiced ease, their public displays of affection eliciting gasps of astonishment and envy. Crystal goblets clinked in toast after toast, celebrating what many hailed as the dawn of a new era, one where tradition bowed to innovation. Yet, beneath the glittering facade of acceptance lay currents of discontent. Powerful factions within the court viewed Ethan's presence as an affront to centuries of carefully maintained order. Lady Serena, a formidable matriarch known for her razor-sharp wit and venomous tongue, openly derided the match. "A human? Truly, Princess Elira has lost her way," she sneered during a particularly tense council meeting, her crimson robe swirling dramatically as she paced. "What wisdom can such a primitive being possibly offer our illustrious lineage?" Serena's words ignited a firestorm of dissent among the elders, who privately feared that Elira's defiance signaled a broader erosion of their influence. Whispers of rebellion echoed through marble corridors, coalescing into secret meetings held under the cover of darkness. Lord Tarek, a military strategist with ambitions of his own, emerged as a key figure in these clandestine gatherings. His piercing gaze and calculated demeanor concealed a hunger for power, and he saw Elira's unconventional choice as an opportunity to destabilize her rule. "If we cannot sway her through persuasion," he murmured to his conspirators, "then perhaps we must remind her of the consequences of hubris." Meanwhile, Ethan bore the brunt of external hostility with stoic resolve. During a diplomatic gala hosted by the neighboring planet of Velthar, he endured pointed barbs disguised as compliments. Ambassador Kale, renowned for his diplomatic acumen, cornered Ethan near the dessert table, his smile deceptively charming. "Tell me, Mr. Carter," Kale drawled, selecting a jewel-encrusted pastry, "does your species typically leap into interspecies unions without proper vetting? Or is this simply your unique approach to diplomacy?" Ethan clenched his fists briefly before forcing a polite smile. "Ambassador Kale, I assure you, my methods are as effective as they are unconventional." Though outwardly composed, the exchange left him seething, reinforcing his awareness of just how precarious their situation remained. Elira, too, faced mounting pressure. The Council of Elders convened emergency sessions, demanding explanations for decisions perceived as reckless. Elder Maris, the eldest and most revered member, fixed Elira with a steely glare during one such gathering. "Your actions jeopardize not only your throne but the very fabric of our society," he intoned gravely. "You tread dangerous ground, child. Be warned, there are limits even to patience." Despite the turmoil, Ethan and Elira found solace in fleeting moments stolen away from prying eyes. Late-night walks through the palace gardens provided sanctuary, the scent of blooming zither flowers masking the tension that clung to them like shadows. During one such stroll, Ethan paused beneath a canopy of bioluminescent vines, turning to Elira with uncharacteristic vulnerability. "Do you ever wonder if we've gone too far?" he asked softly, his voice barely audible over the gentle hum of nocturnal insects. Elira hesitated, her reflection shimmering in a nearby pool of water. "Every day," she admitted, her gaze distant. "But then I remember why we started this, to reclaim control over my life. Over our lives." She reached out, her fingers brushing his wrist lightly. "We've come too far to turn back now." Their resolve strengthened by these quiet confessions, they returned to the fray, determined to weather the storm. Yet, cracks began to form in their carefully constructed narrative. Rumors surfaced of discrepancies in their story, minor inconsistencies that fueled suspicion among the more astute observers. Lady Serena seized upon these tidbits, weaving them into accusations of deceit during a heated debate. "How can we trust a union built on falsehoods?" she thundered, slamming her fist against the council table. "This charade undermines everything we stand for." Amidst the escalating tension, Ethan and Elira clung to each other, their bond deepening with each challenge. But as the threats multiplied, so did the stakes. The fragile peace they had cultivated teetered on the brink of collapse, leaving them to confront a question neither was prepared to answer. Could their partnership survive the truth, or would it shatter under the weight of revelation? The breaking point came unexpectedly, shattering the fragile equilibrium Elira and Ethan had painstakingly built. It began with a seemingly innocuous event, a state banquet hosted in honor of delegates from the distant planet Zitharon. The occasion should have been routine, a display of diplomatic pageantry designed to reinforce alliances. Instead, it spiraled into chaos when Lady Serena, emboldened by her growing coalition of dissenters, seized the opportunity to strike. Midway through the feast, as crystal flutes clinked in celebration, she rose abruptly, her crimson robes billowing dramatically. "Esteemed guests," she announced, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation like a blade. "We gather here tonight under false pretenses. This so-called union between our beloved princess and her peculiar consort is nothing more than a fabrication, a ruse conceived to deceive us all." Gasps rippled through the hall as she gestured theatrically toward Ethan, who sat frozen, his fork suspended mid-air. Beside him, Alyra stiffened, her luminous eyes narrowing into slits of fury. The accusation hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and suffocating. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the faint hum of hovering drones capturing the scene for posterity. Then, pandemonium erupted. Nobles exchanged frantic whispers, some leaping to their feet in outrage while others cast accusatory glares at the couple seated at the head table. Ambassador Kale smirked smugly, clearly relishing the spectacle, while Lord Tarek observed with cold satisfaction, his calculating gaze flicking between Alyra and Ethan. Ethan's mind raced, grappling with the enormity of the betrayal. He had known the risks, understood the precariousness of their position, but nothing could have prepared him for the visceral sting of exposure. His chest tightened as he glanced at Alyra, seeking guidance, reassurance, anything to anchor him amidst the tempest. To his shock, she appeared eerily calm, her expression betraying neither fear nor panic. Rising gracefully, she addressed the assembly, her voice ringing out with commanding clarity. "Lady Serena speaks truths wrapped in malice," Alyra declared, her tone unwavering. "Yes, this union began as a strategic measure, devised to protect my sovereignty. But what she fails to comprehend is that strategy evolved into something far greater, an alliance forged not of necessity but of mutual respect and understanding." Her words silenced the room, drawing incredulous stares from every corner. Lady Serena scoffed, her lip curling in disdain. Mutual respect? Understanding? Such notions are meaningless when built upon lies. Your deception insults us all, Princess. Before Alyra could respond, Elder Maris interjected, his gravelly voice slicing through the tension. "Enough!" he bellowed, slamming his staff against the marble floor. "This matter requires deliberation, not theatrics. We will convene immediately to determine the validity of these claims and decide the fate of this arrangement." As the delegates dispersed, ushered away by guards, Ethan felt the weight of countless eyes burning into him. Some were filled with contempt, others with pity, but none held the warmth he had grown accustomed to seeing in Alyra's gaze. Now, even she seemed distant, her focus consumed by the crisis unfolding before them. When they finally retreated to her private chambers, the atmosphere between them crackled with unspoken emotions. "What now?" Ethan asked hoarsely, collapsing onto a plush divan. His hands trembled slightly, betraying the turmoil raging within. "They'll tear us apart, Alyra. Everything we've worked for, it's over." Alyra turned to face him, her luminous eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and sorrow. "No," she said firmly, though her voice wavered ever so slightly. "We fight. Together." Her declaration ignited a spark within him, reigniting the resolve that had driven him to accept her offer in the first place. He stood, meeting her gaze with newfound intensity. "Then tell me what to do. Whatever it takes, I'm with you." Their mutual commitment solidified in that moment, binding them tighter than any scripted performance ever could. Yet, as they prepared to face the council's judgment, uncertainty loomed large. Would their bond withstand the scrutiny of those who sought to dismantle it? Or would the truth prove too volatile to contain? In the days leading up to the council's deliberation, Alyra and Ethan immersed themselves in preparation, dissecting every possible angle of attack and crafting responses that balanced honesty with strategic ambiguity. They rehearsed tirelessly, their arguments honed to razor-sharp precision. Yet, beneath the surface of their collaboration simmered emotions neither dared articulate. Ethan noticed subtle changes in Alyra's demeanor, moments when her regal composure faltered, revealing glimpses of vulnerability. Once, during a late-night strategy session, he caught her staring out a window, her silhouette framed by the swirling colors of Zyrith Seven's twin sunsets. Without thinking, he approached her, placing a tentative hand on her shoulder. "You're scared," he murmured, his voice barely audible. She didn't deny it. "Terrified," she admitted, her breath hitching. But not just for myself. For you. For what they might do to you if... Her words trailed off, unfinished but heavy with implication. Ethan's heart ached at the rawness of her confession. "Hey," he said gently, turning her to face him. "Whatever happens, we're in this together. Remember." Her lips parted as if to reply, but instead, she leaned forward, resting her forehead against his chest. The gesture was intimate, unguarded, a rare moment of surrender from someone who rarely allowed herself such weakness. Ethan wrapped his arms around her instinctively, holding her close as if to shield her from the impending storm. Neither spoke. Words felt unnecessary, inadequate. In that embrace, something shifted irrevocably, a boundary crossed, a line blurred. When they finally pulled apart, the air between them crackled with unspoken acknowledgement. Both knew they stood on the precipice of something profound, something neither fully understood nor could ignore. As they resumed their preparations, the dynamic between them had changed. Conversations carried undertones of longing, glances lingered longer than necessary, and touches, once purely performative, now carried weight. They were no longer merely allies bound by necessity. They were two souls navigating the fragile intersection of duty and desire. The council chamber loomed ahead, its imposing doors carved with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with latent energy. As Elira and Ethan approached, flanked by a retinue of advisors and guards, the gravity of the moment settled over them like a suffocating shroud. Inside, the elders awaited, their expressions inscrutable, their verdict poised to reshape the trajectory of their lives forever. Hand in hand, they stepped forward, ready to face whatever fate awaited them. The council chamber was a cavernous expanse of polished obsidian and glowing runes, its ceiling lost in shadow. The air thrummed with an almost palpable tension as Elira and Ethan entered, their footsteps echoing unnaturally against the cold stone floor. At the far end of the room sat the council of elders, their towering seats arranged in a semicircle that seemed designed to intimidate. Each elder wore robes of varying hues, their faces illuminated by the soft, otherworldly glow emanating from crystals embedded in the walls. Ethan felt the weight of their collective gaze pressing down on him, each pair of eyes dissecting him like he was some alien specimen under glass. Beside him, Elira stood tall, her posture regal yet defiant, every inch the princess she was born to be. But even she couldn't mask the faint tremor in her hands as they clasped tightly together. He reached for one of them instinctively, his touch grounding her in ways neither had anticipated. "Princess Elira," Elder Maris began, his voice resonating through the chamber like rolling thunder. "You have been accused of deception, a grave offense against the sanctity of our traditions. Do you deny these allegations?" Elira took a step forward, her voice steady despite the turmoil swirling within her. "I do not deny that this union began as a strategic arrangement. However, what Lady Serena fails to understand is that intentions can evolve. What started as necessity has grown into something genuine, a partnership rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose." A murmur rippled through the assembled elders, some nodding thoughtfully while others exchanged skeptical glances. Lady Serena, seated near the center of the semicircle, sneered openly. "Mutual respect? Shared purpose? These are hollow words meant to obscure your betrayal. A human, a primitive creature, cannot possibly comprehend the complexities of our society or contribute meaningfully to it." Before Elira could respond, Ethan stepped forward, surprising both himself and those watching. His voice carried a quiet strength, cutting through the oppressive atmosphere of the chamber. "With all due respect, Lady Serena, I may not come from your world, but I've learned more about it in these past months than most people will in a lifetime. I didn't ask for this role, but I've embraced it because I believe in Elira, and in what we can achieve together. If you think my presence here makes me unworthy, then judge me on my actions, not my origins." The room fell silent, the audacity of his words hanging heavy in the air. For a moment, it seemed as though time itself had stopped. Then, Elder Tareen, an ancient figure whose wrinkles mapped centuries of wisdom, leaned forward, his piercing gaze locking onto Ethan's. "And what actions might those be, young man? What have you done to prove yourself worthy of standing beside our princess?" Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. It wasn't just about defending himself, it was about proving that their bond mattered. "I've seen how hard Elira fights to balance duty and desire, to carve out space for herself in a world that demands so much. I've stood by her side, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Together, we've faced challenges neither of us could have tackled alone. That's worth something, isn't it? His sincerity struck a chord, even among the most skeptical members of the council. Elder Maris stroked his beard thoughtfully, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. Your words carry conviction, human. But conviction alone does not absolve deceit. This council must deliberate carefully before rendering judgment. As the elders retreated behind closed doors to confer, Alyra and Ethan were left in the chamber, surrounded by whispers and speculative stares. She turned to him, her luminance dimmed by exhaustion but still radiant with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I wasn't sure I could face them without losing myself." "You're stronger than you think," Ethan replied softly, offering a small smile. "We'll get through this, together." Hours passed, though it felt like days. When the doors finally reopened, Elder Maris emerged, holding a scroll inscribed with glowing symbols. The room fell silent as he unrolled it, his voice carrying the weight of finality. After much deliberation, the council has reached a decision. Princess Alyra, your actions have indeed challenged the foundations of our traditions. Yet, we cannot ignore the authenticity of the bond you share with this human. Therefore, we grant you a conditional reprieve. Your union shall remain intact, but only if you demonstrate unequivocally that it serves the greater good of Zyrith. 7. Relief washed over Alyra, though tinged with apprehension. "What must we do?" she asked, her voice steady. "You will undertake a mission of utmost importance," Elder Maris continued. "There exists a threat beyond our borders, a faction seeking to destabilize the galaxy. You and your consort must journey to the edge of known space and confront this menace. Success will validate your partnership, failure will result in its dissolution, and severe consequences for both of you." The gravity of the task settled over them like a leaden mantle. As the council dismissed them, Ethan and Alyra exchanged a glance, their resolve hardened by the stakes now laid bare. They would leave at dawn, venturing into the unknown not just to save themselves, but to protect everything they held dear. That night, as they prepared for departure, the palace buzzed with activity. Servants packed provisions, technicians calibrated starships, and advisors briefed them on potential dangers lurking in the void ahead. Amidst the chaos, Ethan found himself drawn to the gardens where they had shared so many quiet moments. There, beneath the bioluminescent vines, Alyra awaited him, her silver hair catching the light like spun moonbeams. "We're really doing this," she said softly, her voice tinged with awe and trepidation. "Yeah," Ethan replied, stepping closer. "Guess there's no turning back now." She smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting galaxies. "Do you ever wonder why things turned out this way? Why we ended up here, together?" He shrugged, his gaze meeting hers. "Maybe it's fate. Or maybe it's just two people trying to find their place in a universe that doesn't always make sense. Either way, I'm glad it's with you." Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining effortlessly. In that moment, amidst the fragility of uncertainty, something shifted. Words went unspoken, yet promises were made, alliances deeper than any forged in courts or councils. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it as one. As dawn broke over Zyrith, 7, casting its lavender skies in hues of gold and crimson, their ship ascended into the heavens. Below them, the planet shrank until it was nothing more than a distant speck, swallowed by the vastness of space. Ahead stretched the infinite unknown, brimming with peril and possibility alike. Together, they soared toward destiny, their hearts beating as one against the backdrop of eternity.